Myths have been floating around for centuries, and it's hard to grow up without getting your ears filled with at least bits and pieces from Norse, Greek, Roman, or Egyptian mythology. We've compiled a list of the most insane underwater myths you need to know about, just to save you the Google search results. The Loch Ness Monster, not just a monster in Scooby-Doo. This monster myth comes with a nickname, Nessie. Yes, they took this centuries-old monster and gave her a nickname to make her seem more wholesome. Nessie's first sighting was by Saint Columba in 6 CE. Nessie apparently was just as religious as Columba because when he made the sign of a cross and said, "Go no further," she listened and swam away. Kudos to Nessie for being more obedient than most children. This monster has since then shown up in numerous accounts. Its descriptions vary from one wild story to another. If all these stories are to be believed, then Nessie is sometimes a large stubby-legged animal and sometimes a whale-like fish. We hope Nessie can become less aggressive in the future and more docile like she was in Scooby-Doo. Is the Leviathan a sea serpent or just a demon looking for humans to eat? Leviathans have featured some way or the other in most mythical shows. Not only that, but this mythical beast has wormed its way into William Blake's poetry as well. Popular culture has taken this age-old myth from Judaism, Christianity, and Tanakh and portrayed this sea serpent as abstract monsters willing to destroy the world. They've featured in films and TV shows and have been widely interpreted as a dark race that ruled before humans, a stalking monster as if we didn't already have enough stalkers in society, and also as the ruler of hell, with CW Supernatural taking the cake and turning them into shapeshifters who devour humans. If you thought you had to worry about these underwater mythical creatures only when you're under the water, I have some bad news for you. Throw a barrel when you see the umibozu. Japanese folklore is rich in creatures which would terrify all of us, and the umibozu is no different. Some say their bald heads and their bent postures remind them of Buddhist monks, but monks or not, these creatures are deadly to most people they come across. Legend says that fishermen in the area were commanded to always sacrifice their first fish to the gods, and if you fail to do that, well, you're sacrificing yourself and all the others on your ship. The umibozu appears silently and suddenly. One second you're peacefully floating, and the next you're facing eternal doom. When you see the umibozu, you're supposed to throw a barrel of food to appease it. Sometimes it accepts it, and sometimes it kills you. The stakes are high, folks. The best way to escape it is by throwing a bottomless barrel at it and whizzing away before it looks up again. Sirens. Turns out women really do have the power to make men lose control and jump fully clothed into the ocean. Sirens are widely known as the beautiful female creatures that used to lure sailors into deep, creepy underwater caves with the sweetness of their voice and proceed to make them kill themselves. Sirens are creatures of Greek mythology, sporting an impressive body featuring half bird, half woman, and voices so haunting that they made sailors lose control. They're said to be the daughters of the sea god, Phorcys, or of the river god, Achilles. They've been a pain not just to local fishermen, but also big names like Odysseus. Yes, the real Chad himself was pretty close to wrecking his ship and leading his legacy to an early death by essentially the creature that could be considered the Mariah Carey of the sea. However, it turns out the sirens don't take too well to rejection. Legend goes that in Hyginus's Fabulae, one guy who was either deaf or just really not into bird women was able to resist their song, which pretty much led to the siren killing herself. Yikes. Is the lost city of Atlantis lost, or was it just never there? Atlantis was the utopia Plato described in his lore, which had essentially all the material wealth and happiness you could ever hope to achieve, or not. This interpretation was how pop culture depicted Atlantis. In Plato's recounts, Atlanta was the utopia to rival Athens and the island that eventually suffered the wrath of the gods and was sunk. So many tragedies could have been prevented if everyone had a little more control over their tempers. It's a hard pill to swallow for some, but this utopia is considered to most likely just be another plot device to carry on Plato's stories. This writer took quite a few creative liberties, and I'm not sure whether he deserves credit for his imagination or something not that positive. This lore has been carried on by numerous books and movies, with even Disney catapulting on this plot device and creating its own franchise after it. Sargasso seaweeds. You'd think with 50 feet tall sea serpents, lost underwater cities, and vicious singers, you've heard everything. I'm here to tell you that carnivorous plants are a thing. Most urban legends at least have some vividly exaggerated accounts to back their lore. But this is one story that stems from no logic, no eyewitnesses, and yet is widely believed in the shores of the Sargasso Sea. In the 1800s, sailors widely believed that all the disappearing crewmates had been eaten by the dense seaweeds in the water. They also found ghost ships, empty ships manned by no one, and obviously their logical explanation was man-eating seaweeds. Not that maybe sailors needed a break and maybe ran off to find their one true love, Kraken. So, you know how Greenland has the lowest population density in in the entire world? Well, we might have just found out why that is. Krakens are yet another type of giant sea monsters who were said to have existed off the coasts of Norway and Greenland. Turns out, having a giant octopus creature with spiky tentacles and the ability to pull ships underwater and take down entire cities with ease might lead to a lack of citizens. Krakens are widely known in Greek mythology, however, they've had their fair share of appearances in Scandinavian folklore as well as Norse sagas. They're terrifying in all of them. They're said to be the offspring of the god of the rivers, Oceanus, and the goddess of creepy sea monsters, Ceto. Yeah, the dude went for the psychopath of the town. Hope he was able to clean the rivers of all the debris his kit brought about every time it got bored. Scylla and Charybdis are the definition of a dynamic duo. If you've spent your childhood reading Percy Jackson, this is another one to tick off the list. Accurately placed, Riordan brought in these Greek mythological monsters to set the scene for Percy traveling the Sea of Monsters. But Percy isn't the only Greek hero Scylla and Charybdis have terrorized. Odysseus stole that spot eons ago when both these monsters ended up killing more than half of his companions. These two mythical creatures have coined their own phrase to be between Scylla and Charybdis, which essentially conveys exactly how terrifying this dynamic duo is. 12 feet tall, Scylla, a six-headed female creature, sat in her lair and devoured anyone in reach. And if she missed an unfortunate soul, Charybdis, an equally terrifying female, drank and belched water on the opposite shore to make sailing across this sea impossible. If this doesn't put you off sea travel, I don't know what will. It's better to face the wrath of Zeus in the sky than these two in the sea. Selkies are the definition of new body, new me. Celtic mythology contributed to this compilation of myths, and although the jury's still out, Selkies are perhaps some of the more harmless creatures on this list. These creatures are half fish, half human. When swimming in the sea, they're seals, and on land, they shed their skin and become human. As all legends go, these creatures too are resistible to any man who sees her. It's love at first sight. Selkies get the better hand compared to mermaids, but they come with their own vulnerability. Legend says that if a human finds the skin of a Selkie, the human can control it and make the Selkie his wife. You'd think there are enough women on land to marry, but as the lore goes, fishermen in Ireland used to do this and hold these Selkies in captivity for their entire lives. In one particular story, a Selkie captured and wedded with children found its skin and ran away. She didn't want to leave her children, so she turned them into rocks and took them into the water with her. That's bad parenting, folks. The Devil's Triangle. Maybe don't go there. There's the Bermuda Triangle that every child has been obsessed with when growing up, but as usual, no one remembered its younger, less-known brother, the Devil's Triangle, or the Dragon's Triangle. This relatively unknown place also goes by the Pacific's Bermuda. This terrifying place is right next to the shores of Japan, the homeland of the most terrifying mythical creatures. However, this legend stems from Chinese culture, where they believe dragons exist below the sea and attack the ships simply because they're hungry. Who's going to tell them there are better ways to cope when they're hungry? When Japanese fishermen suffered the same fate, they coined it Ma no Umi, the Sea of the Devil. Needless to say, no one likes to go there. That wraps up the mysteries and monsters in the undersea. Maybe next time we can talk about the creatures in the sky and have a healthy debate about sea travel versus air travel.